أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك المظلومين الغر الميامين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة غريب، يا مظلوم كربلاء. سيدي يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. ورد في زيارة مولانا أبي عبد الله الحسين عن إمامنا الصادق عليه السلام، وبذل مهجته فيك ليستنقذ عبادك من الجهالة وحيرة الضلال. For the hastening of the reappearance of the 12th Imam, the Avenger, the one who restores justice for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, أرواحنا له الفداء. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن أداهم.
الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Last night we talked about how it is the greatest honor and the biggest bounty and gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us for having shown us the path to the doorstep of Hussein, having guided us to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Because when you find guidance through Hussein, you then find guidance towards everything that is good, all that is virtuous. You find your path to Allah, you find your path to righteousness. When you find Hussein, you found the secret to living a life of virtue in this world as well as the next. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made Abu Abdullah al-Hussein the ark of salvation and the lantern of guidance. If you look at the mission of Imam al-Hussein, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, you will find that from beginning to end, his singular objective was the guidance of mankind. His prime motive, the driving force for the journey that he took, was none other his desire to guide people, to show them the way, to take them off their dangerous trajectory and their path to self-destruction. Abu Abdullah al-Hussein did what he did in order to guide us. This is exactly what Imam al-Sadiq refers to in the ziyarah that I quoted at the beginning, where the Imam says, speaking about Imam al-Hussein, بَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكَ. O Allah, Imam al-Hussein gave you the blood of his heart. In the body we have veins, we have organs, we have skin, we have muscle, we have bones. And in all of these, the blood courses through, maintaining and sustaining life in the body. But where is the origin of this blood? Where is all this blood coming from? It comes from its original source, that being the heart. Imam al-Sadiq says, بَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكَ. He didn't give you the blood of his veins, the blood of his artery, the blood of his organs, the blood of his muscle. He gave you the blood of his heart, which is both a metaphorical reference to how Imam al-Hussein sacrificed everything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The nearest and dearest of his possessions were given in the way of Allah. So it's a metaphoric reference, but it's also a literal reference to the blood that Abu Abdullah al-Hussein gave on the day of Ashura, which came gushing out of his sacred blood, his sacred heart. بَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكَ. Why? What was the purpose? What was the objective? لِيَسْتَنْقِذَ, which means to salvage. To salvage something is to save it from complete and utter annihilation. لِيَسْتَنْقِذَ عِبَادَكَ, in order to salvage your slaves, مِنَ الْجَهَالَةِ وَحَيْرَةِ الضَّلَالَةِ, from ignorance and the bewilderment and confusion of not knowing which direction to go. Had it not been for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, we'd have no idea which direction to take. Had it not been for Imam al-Hussein, let me cut this short, and without getting into too many details, without Hussein, we'd all be members of ISIS. We'd all have the same mentality, the same mindset, the same vicious, heartless, merciless attitude towards others, where we would kill children without skipping a heartbeat, without losing a single moment of sleep over it. Without Hussein, we'd be miniature examples of Yazid. We'd be replicas of the sworn enemies of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So Imam al-Hussein comes along and pays the highest possible, greatest conceivable sacrifice, the highest price anyone could pay, in order to awaken us, in order to show us the way. Let me share some examples with you to demonstrate how Imam al-Hussein's objective was not to win the battle, although the Imam did attempt and exert every effort to win the battle. Because remember, Imam al-Hussein had a stated objective and he had an instrumental objective. Imam al-Hussein had a responsibility towards his family, towards his children, towards his companions, to protect them, to cherish them, to look after them. And for someone who has a responsibility to look after the women and the children, he's not going to abandon them. He's going to fight to the death. And that's what he did. But the ultimate objective, the end game, if you like, to use modern jargon, was not to win the battle. It was not to reach Kufa. It was not, again, we're talking about the end game. We're talking about the ultimate objective. It was not perhaps even to topple the tyrannical regime of Yazid, although that is a very noble goal. And Imam al-Hussein would have had to at least attempt to do that in order to reach his end goal, which was to guide people. How do we know that? Well, Imam Hussein himself stated this over and over again. Remember the famous statement of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, where he said, "Inni lam akhruj ashran wala batiran." I didn't come out, I didn't rise in order to get an adventure, in order to experience some kind of gain. I didn't come out in order to spread mischief, which was an accusation leveled against him by the regime at the time, as well as subsequent scholars and historians who stood at opposing sides to Imam al-Hussein. And even to this very day, believe it or not, there are people who say Imam al-Hussein, including Wahhabis, including the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia. I've seen him myself say this. He says Imam al-Hussein should have stayed at home and avoided causing mischief and disunity in the Ummah. By coming outside, Imam al-Hussein shaqqa asa al-Muslimin. He broke Muslims in half. He divided Muslims in two parts. One part that supported him, another part that opposed him. Unity was a better approach that the Imam could have adopted, and he should have listened to the companions of the Prophet. He should have listened to Abdullah ibn Umar. He should have listened to his own brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, who had very good intentions, by the way. He should have listened to all the people who told him this is a losing cause. Everyone told him that. Everyone thinking that Imam al-Hussein doesn't know. If your goal is to topple Yazid and nothing else, then yes, that would have been a losing cause. Uphill battle. In fact, it wasn't just an uphill battle. It was literally impossible. You're coming out with 250 companions as well as family members trying to defeat an army of 30,000? You think Imam Hussein doesn't know that this is a losing cause? You think Imam Hussein can't strategize militarily? Imam Hussein is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Hussein is the grandson of Rasulullah. When it comes to military strategy, he's the last person to be lectured. He knows. And yet he says to his own brother, "Why are you going out, O Hussein?" Sha Allah an yarani qatila. God wishes to see me sacrificed. "Why are you taking the women and the children, Ya Aba Abdullah?" Sha Allah an yarahunna sabaya. God wishes to see them taken captive. Because even the blood of Hussein is not going to be sufficient to turn the tables around and to sow the seeds of guidance on this earth. It'll also take the cries of Zainab. It'll take the martyrdom of Ruqayyah. It'll take Abdullah al-Radi''s severed neck. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to see this plan taking its proper course. Let me share some examples. Once again, I don't want to go off course too much, to demonstrate how Imam al-Hussein's only real objective was to guide people. On the day of Ashura, I'll just give you some snapshots, right? Some quick glimpses, if you like. On the day of Ashura, you recall that there was a verbal exchange between the camp of Umar ibn Sa'd and the companions of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, where the camp of Umar insulted the Imam. Some of the companions, filled with loyalty for Abu Abdullah and love for the Imam, could not stand there and hear someone insult their master. So they grabbed the handles of their swords. The Imam stopped them. He said, no, don't. Why? إِنِّي أَكْرَهُ أَنْ أَبْدَأَهُمْ بِقِتَالٍ. The Imam said, I would hate to be the one who begins the war. I would hate to be the one who instigates the battle. Allahu Akbar. What a great statement that is. And what a proof that is that Imam al-Hussein was not there to shed blood, to kill, to cause mischief or fitna. In a war, ask any general, ask any military strategist. If you begin the first strike, you always have an advantage over your enemy. Why? Because you take them by surprise. Yet the Imam said, no, I will not be the one who starts this war. Umar ibn Sa'd then approaches. He grabs a bow and arrow, and he shoots an arrow towards the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And he says to his companions, "Ishhadu li 'inda al-amir anni awwal man rama." Bear witness with the commander, with the Amir, in other words, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad or Yazid. Tell him when you meet him that I was the one who shot the first arrow. Historians and writers of the Maqtal state that after the first arrow was shot at the camp of Hussein, جَاءَتْهُمُ السِّهَامُ كَالْمَطَرِ. Arrows began firing and falling at the camp of the tiny camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein like rain. And this went on for an hour. An hour is what historians have stated. Imagine a tiny camp, 70-odd companions, 30-odd family members, women, children. An hour of arrows coming down like rain. فَمَنْ جَلَتِ الْغَبْرَةِ. The dust, when it settled, 52 of the Imam's companions had been killed. In a camp of 72, when you lose 52, how many do you end up with? The Imam's camp was broken with the war not even started yet. Then, when it was time for Salat al-Dhuhr, Imam al-Hussein lost Habib ibn Modarresi, his greatest companion, the commander of the Ansar. Habib ibn Modarresi, by the way, has a special status in the heart of not just Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, but Lady Zainab alayhi salam. When he came and joined the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, historians say Zainab was rejoiced. Habib has arrived. Tali al-Quran. Man kana yuqimu as-salat hatta as-sabah. Habib ibn Modarresi, this heroic, legendary man. Habib was killed because there was a skirmish. There was an argument over the fact that it's now prayer time. Let's just pause the battle and pray. Habib went, and another 10 companions were killed in that skirmish. In that few moments that passed. That's before prayer. During prayer, the Imam lost 2 of his companions. We talked about one of them last night, Sa'id ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi, and another. After prayer, 9 companions were left, and those 9 companions were finished off within a matter of minutes. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. There's a village near Kufa called Muhakkima. This is what I'm trying to get to. This village on the outskirts of Kufa was the hotbed of the Khawariji movement. The Khawarij, as some of you would know, are people who fought with Amir al-Mu'mineen. And they gathered at the site of Nahrawan, which is near Baghdad, present-day Baghdad. And it's there that they faced off with the army of the commander of the faithful, and the Imam and his army were able to crush them, to deal them a crushing defeat. Muhakkima was one of the villages where a lot of the people who showed up in Nahrawan and who called for the death of Ali ibn Abi Talib, they came from where? From Muhakkima. There were two brothers who came from Muhakkima and joined the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. Obviously, because they have no sympathy for Imam al-Hussein. They hated his father, they hate him as well. نَقْتُلُكَ بُغْضًا مِنَّا لِأَبِيكَ, they used to say. We kill you out of hatred and enmity towards your father. These two brothers, one was named Abu al-Hutuf, the other is Sa'id ibn al-Harith al-Kufiyayn. They're mentioned in Maqtal books, in the narrative that discusses the events of Ashura. These two, again, Imam al-Hussein is trying to guide people. He's not trying to kill them. He's not trying to destroy them. He could, if he wanted to start the battle, to have that advantage. But no, he didn't. These two brothers, when they heard Aba Abdullah al-Husayn's cry, ألا هل من ناصر ينصرنا لوجه الله ألا هل من داب يذب عن حرم رسول الله, is there no one to help us for the sake of Allah? Is there no one to protect the women of the Messenger of Allah? وأشار إلى خيمته, and he was pointing towards his tent when saying, is there no one to protect my family, the children of the Prophet? These two people, they were awoken. These two brothers from Muhakkima, Khawarij, Nahrawan. And yet the cries of Hussein woke them up. So as they were inside the camp and the army of Umar ibn Sa'd, Sallama ala al-Hussein, historians say. They said, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. They were too shy, they were ashamed of coming towards Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, because they had taken part in the siege, they had prevented water from reaching the Imam, they had done all they had done. They were too ashamed of coming to the Imam and shaking his hand and kissing his head. Instead, they said, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. From where they stood, they took out their swords, they began fighting their own comrades, the soldiers of Umar ibn Sa'd. فَقَاتَلَا حَتَّى قُتِلَا. They fought to the death. Imam al-Hussein did everything he did on the day of Ashura to guide people. Like these two brothers, like 27 people were killed after the death of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. 27. Many of them from the camp of Umar ibn Sa'd. Let me give you another example. Imam al-Hussein, historians say that when news of the murder of Muslim ibn Aqil reached the camp of Hussein, Sukayna bint al-Hussein, the Imam's daughter, narrates that his companions began shrinking, because there were people who joined the Imam thinking that we're going to go and we're going to fight and we're going to win, and after we win, Imam al-Hussein will become the Khalifa, and when he becomes Khalifa, we'll all live happily ever after. We might even get a piece of the cake, we might even get appointed to sensitive government posts. And so they came along for the ride, not so much to support the Imam. When news of the murder of Muslim reached, these people realized that there's going to be death, there's going to be carnage, there's going to be bloodshed, and we want no part of that. So Sukayna says that same night they began dwindling down. They began leaving the camp. In their 10s and 20s and 30s and 50s and 60s, they began abandoning their master Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. What this proves is that there were a lot of people who were with the Imam who later on abandoned him. These same people were with the Imam when the army of Hur reached him. The army of Hur, again, these are just examples to demonstrate that the Imam was not there to fight, but to guide. When the army of Hur arrived, first of all, Imam Hussein's camp had many more fighters than it did on the day of Ashura. Secondly, they were all well nourished, they were well fed, they were not thirsty, they were not hungry. Thirdly, the army of Hur was thirsty, hungry, tired, and exhausted, which is why Imam al-Hussein extended to them what no person extends to his enemies, which is that he fed not only them, he quenched not only their thirst, but he even commanded his army and his companions to feed and quench the thirst of their horses. Imam al-Hussein knew full well that just in a few days' time, these same horses would be trampling with their hooves upon his bare chest. Imam al-Hussein knew that. But the Imam has a different mission. The Imam did what he did in order to guide them. And if it meant only Hur would be guided at the end of the day, that would have been good enough for him. In the end, who was guided? Hur found the light. Hur's son, Ali ibn al-Hur, also found the light. His slave also joined them and fought to protect Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam al-Hussein is trying to guide, which is why someone like Wahab al-Kalbi joins him. Wahab was a Christian man. Not only was he a Christian man who you would think that he says to himself, this war has nothing to do with me. Some Muslims are fighting the grandson of their prophet. What am I with all of this? What have I got to do with this? Wahab was a Christian. Number two, Wahab was a newlywed. And newlywed is focused on one thing and one thing alone. His new life with his bride, the love of his life. And yet not only does Wahab join the camp of Hussein, his wife joins the camp of Hussein. His mother joins the camp of Hussein. And on the day of Ashura, when Wahab goes into the battlefield, fights, his wife is telling him, Ya Nur Aini, oh light of my eye, don't get killed, be careful, look after yourself. Don't leave me bereaved, don't make me a widow. But his mother is telling him, go, qatil dun at-tayyibin, go fight in the way of these noble men and women. Go get killed, my son. Make me proud on the day of judgment when I stand before Fatima. So he fights, he then comes back. He says to his mother, Ummah, araditi minni, are you satisfied with me? His mother says, La wallah hatta tuqtal duna. I will never be satisfied with you until you die protecting Hussein. So he goes back into the battlefield. He suddenly hears his wife changing her tone. His wife now starts to say, Qatil dun at-tayyibin ya azizi. Fight, fight, O Wahab, make me proud. Stunned, he turned around. He says, what happened? Just a moment ago you were asking me, you were pleading with me not to go. Now you're saying I should go and fight? She says, Na'am, inna wa'iyat al-Husayn kasarat qalbi. I heard the cries of Hussein and that broke my heart. When I noticed Hussein was left all alone, saying, is there no one to help us? Imam al-Hussein wants to guide people like Wahab, his wife, who was ultimately killed while holding the head of her beloved husband. He wants to guide them. He wants to guide you. He wants to guide me. That is the whole purpose, brothers and sisters. Zuhair was not someone known to be a Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. He was a Uthmani. Uthmani was one who accused Imam Ali of killing Uthman and therefore wanted Imam Ali to be killed. Imam Hussein guides him. Imam al-Hussein guides the big, the small, the young, the old, the woman, the man, the child, the adult. Anyone and everyone is welcome into the camp of Hussein, into the ark of salvation. In fact, the guidance of Imam al-Hussein penetrated the thick palatial walls of the fortress of Yazid himself. Even Yazid and his family and the people around him, his own wife Hind, found the truth and the light of Hussein. The story is famous, I don't want to get into it. Imam al-Hussein's guidance reverberated and echoed even beyond his death. The revolution of Tawwabin, the repenters led by al-Khuza'i, these are people who, as soon as Imam al-Hussein was killed, tens of thousands of them headed towards Karbala. They marched to the site of the murder of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. They sat there for 3 days and 3 nights, no pep talk, no speeches, no lectures. All they did was weep and cry and sob for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Their poetry still exists to this day. The things that they were saying to each other as they wept. They would say things like, Ya Abu Abdullah, we heard that they severed the hand of your brother Abbas. Ya Abu Abdullah, is it true that they decapitated your son Abdullah al-Radi'? Ya Abu Abdullah, we weren't there on the day of Ashura. Now we are here and we wish to avenge your blood and restore justice for you. And every last single one of them was killed in the way of Hussein. At Tawabi, they were all murdered. They were all killed, trying to restore justice for Abu Abdullah. One last thing. You've heard speakers, I'm sure, saying that Imam al-Hussein pleaded for water on the day of Ashura. There is a bit of a controversy about this. Some have said that while Imam al-Hussein might have asked for water for his family and his children, he would never ask for water for himself. Why? Because it's a menial, demeaning, humiliating thing to do. For someone to beg for water is an act of humiliation, and the Imam would never do that. Personally, I think the Imam did ask for water, but not because he needed it, not because the Imam needed their mercy or their handouts, but because the Imam is trying to awaken any last remaining trace of compassion in their hearts. The Imam is trying to guide them, as I said. And so the Imam did say, وَحَقِّ جَدِّي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أَنَا عَطْشَانٍ, by the honor of my grandfather Rasulullah, I'm thirsty. أُسْقُونِي شَرْبَةً مِنَ الْمَاءِ, give me just a drink of water. The Imam said that. But it's not because he needed it. Like I said, there were multiple occasions where we know the Imam could have miraculously reached the water. The Imam could pray to Allah and Allah would make the heavens rain water. There's no problem. But the Imam asked them for water because he is trying to awaken them. Why else do you think the Imam took his 6-month-old infant to the battlefield just before getting killed himself? I don't want to read the masa'ib of Ali al-Asghar, of Abdullah al-Radi' tonight. We'll leave that until the eve of Ashura. But remember when the Imam said to the enemy, أَلَا تَرَوْنَ إِلَى هَذَا الرَّضِيعِ يَتَلَبَّى عَطَشًا. يَتَلَبَّى عَطَشًا means he has reached the stage where even if you quench him, he will still die. All I want is for him not to die while thirsty. Abdullah al-Radi' was going to die anyway of the malnutrition, of the thirst that he was subjected to. How much can a 6-month-old infant bear not being fed a drop of milk from his mother? How much can a 6-month-old infant withstand not drinking any water for 3 days and 3 nights in the scorching heat of the desert of Karbala. Not long. So the Imam said, do you not see that he is dying? He is breathing his last. So why did the Imam then take him and ask for water? Here's why. Umar ibn Sa'd looks at Shimr ibn Dhul Jawshan. La'natullahi alayhima. He says to Shimr, Ya Shimr, اقطع نزاع القوم. Oh Shimr, end this dispute. What dispute? What happened? What is he referring to? When Imam al-Hussein brought out his 6-month-old infant sitting on the back of his camel, not his horse, so he's not there to fight, holding the Quran in one hand and his infant in the other, wearing the turban of Rasulullah on his sacred head. When the Imam came out in such a fashion, many of the troops fighting for Umar ibn Sa'd started saying, إِن كَانَ لِلرِّجَالِ ذَنْبٌ فَمَا ذَنْبُ هَذَا الصَّغِيرِ. If the adults have committed a crime, whether it be dissent, whether it be revolt, whether it be, trying to overthrow the regime, what have the children done? What has this infant done? Historians state that over 20 of the soldiers of Umar ibn Sa'd unsheathed their swords and began fighting their own comrades because their hearts were awakened by the cries of Hussein and the tears of Ali ibn al-Asghar. There were people who abandoned the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. So Umar ibn Sa'd realized that this was the moment of truth. If we don't act now, this will end the battle. People will stop fighting. People will see the truth. What do? He just made a gesture to Shimr. He said, أَلَا تَرَى بَيَاضَ نَحْرِهِ. Do you not see the whiteness of his neck? He said, أَأَضْرِبُ الْوَالِدْ أَمِ الْوَلَدْ. Should I shoot the father or the son? Imam al-Hussein is trying to guide. He's trying to show us the light, brothers and sisters. What we have to do is reach out to him. What we have to do is honor him. Honor his aza. Honor his musab. Do as a bereaved person would do. To wear black, to attend the gatherings, to do whatever we can in order to glorify the signs of Hussein, the sha'a'ir of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein paid a heavy price. Tonight is a night we remember one of the dearest prices that Imam al-Hussein paid for the guidance of mankind. Historians say that when they brought the women and the children to Sham, if you look at a map or if you've ever been to Syria, you'll notice that from Babu Sa'at, which is where the caravan was stationed, to Darul Imara, which is where the governor or the Khalifa was positioned, the distance is very short. It would take, even in the narrow alleyways of Sham, it would take no more than half an hour. And yet historians say that that journey from Babu Sa'at to Darul Imara took a full day, because they took the women and the children, the orphans of Hussein, the widows of Hussein, the bereaved women of Hussein. They took them around the city, parading them, humiliating them, making a spectacle out of them, getting people to mock, to laugh, to throw things at them. Allahu Akbar. It took them all day. One man who was supervising the caravan, he says that when I reached the palace of Darul Imara, I looked at the marble floors of the entrance to the palace, and I noticed that it was full of bloody footprints. جای پای خونی بود، جای پای بزرگ، جای پای کوچک، همه خونی. The marble floors of the palace of Yazid were stained with the blood of the children of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. They took them to the ruins next to the palace. It was a long day. It was a hard day. When Lady Zainab was done getting this woman to fall asleep, comforting this bereaved girl, comforting this orphan child, when everyone had calmed down, everyone had fallen asleep, it was now time for Zainab to catch some sleep. As soon as she tried to fall asleep, she overheard the cries of a young girl calling out, Abba, 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 Baba Jana, Baba Jana. این کیه گریه میکنه رقیه جان چرا نمیخوابی گفت عمه جان الان بابامو تو خواب دیدم خیلی اون شب خواب دیدن امام حسین رو دیدن حضرت عباس رو دیدن یک چیزی که مشترک بود بین همه اینا این بود که بعد که بیدار می شدن میگفتن که ما شکایت کردیم دق دل رو خالی کردیم ولی یه چیزی که همه میگفتن بابا جان هر وقت اونها میخواستن ما رو بزنن عممون زینب خودشو سپر میکرد اجازه نمیداد بابا جان عمه زینب و کتک زدن بابا اف به این آدم ها اف به این مردمی که یک بچه یتیم وقتی بابا میکنه عوض این که ساکتش کنن سر بابا رو میاره میگن خرابه شام تا جای تاریکی بود ولی دیدن یواش یواش در روشن و روشن‌تر میشه چی شده دیدن طبقی رو آورده عمه جان من نگفتم غذا میخوام من گفتم بابامو میخوام گفتن بابا تو میخوای نگاهی به این طبق بکن تا نگاه کرد شهقی زد 7 عبارت 7 جمله گفتن حضرت رقیه اون وقت گفت اول همه گفت ابا من الذی قطع رأسک پدر جان بابا کی سر تو برید بابا جان من الذی خضب الشیب الشریف دیگه من ترجمه نمی کنم ابا من الذی ایتمنی علی صغر سنی بابا کی منو یتیم کرد بابا جان کجا بودی منو کتک زده در یه نقلی داره گفت بابا جان کاش من کور بودم و سر بریده تو بابا جان کاش من میمردم زیر خاک دفن بودم تو رو به این حال نمیدید بابا جان من شنیدم مادرت زهرا رو 40 مرد داخل خانه شدن او رو کتک زدن ولی بابا ما رو به 40 منزل برده هر منزلی که میرسیدیم ما رو کتک میزده علامه مجلسی میگه این حرف من نیست حرف مورخین نیست علامه مجلسی تو بهار الانوار میفرماید که مادر حضرت رقیه اونجا حضور داشت تو شام بود یهو مادرش نگاه کرد گفت بیبی حضرت زینب چرا صدای دخترم رقیه قطع شد حضرت زینب نگاهی کرد بل یک طرف بلبل یک طرف رقیه یک طرف سر بابا یک طرف امام زین العابدین فرمود عم زینب احملی اختی عم جان خواهرم رقیه را از روی سر بابا بردار رقیه الان ملحق شد به بابا همه بگی اون شب خیلی گریه کردن خیلی درجه کشیدن همه داغ دیده بودن ولی خیلی گریه کردن اول شب بود حضرت رقیه به شهادت رسید اما تا نزدیک صبح حضرت زینب گریه می کرد تا وقتی که حضرت زین العابدین امام سجاد فرمود عمه جان ما امام حسین رو از دست دادیم حضرت ابوالفضل رو شهید دیدیم چرا اینقدر گریه می کنی حضرت ام کلثوم حضرت زینب فرمود سیدی میدونی من چرا گریه میکنم به خاطر اینه که قبل از این که همه بخوابن رقیه از من پرسید گفت عمه جان آیا آب داری من بخورم گفتم رقیه جان امشب دیگه به ما آب نمیدن رفت تا صبح به من گفت عمه غذایی هست لقمه ای هست من گرسنمه بهش گفتم همه دارم رقیه جان رفت تا فردا شاید چیزی بیارن من به خاطر این گریه میکنم که رقیه از دنیا رفت به خاطر داغ دل از دنیا رفت ولی مثل پدرش تشنه و گرسنه از دنیا رفت همه بگید مظلوم حسین